So I just did a video about George Bush, and my mom actually came up with a good idea that most of my videos are generally critiquing something, and maybe I should try a different video. So what I'm going to do is basically review the Obama presidency so far. And I don't think it's too early to do that. Okay. When Obama came into office, we were bleeding several thousand jobs a month. And since he's taken office, we've been adding several 100,000 jobs a month. So he deserves credit for that. He deserves credit for passing the stimulus, which was the largest in history, and prevented the economy from dipping into a depression rather than a recession. The stimulus also deserves credit because it was the largest investment in alternative energy ever. But it deserves critique because he completely caved to the Republicans and larded it up with tax cuts. It could have been a lot better if it weren't for all those tax cuts that really didn't have as much of a stimulative effect on the economy. Reform the credit card industry. Credit card industry is always going to fight those reforms and find loopholes, but it was a good try. Whoops. It was a good try, and it did do some things that protect consumers. The one bad thing he did is he chose 7 Republicans for his cabinet. More than any other president in history. He renominated Robert Gates, a Bush nominee. That's just one example. There's a bunch of people. Worse yet, he actually reappointed Ben Bernanke as Fed chairman, which Ben Bernanke is a shitty Fed chairman. He does the same thing with inflation rates Greenspan did that benefit Wall Street, but not so much Main Street. He caught Osama bin Laden. That's a pretty big deal. He ended the war in Iraq, but with Obama, there's always a but. He left 50,000 residual troops, which is not so mission accomplished, in my opinion. He extended the Bush tax cuts, which is horrible idea. And actually, in those tax cuts, there was an additional tax cut to the Social Security payroll tax. And if you just heard a meow, that is my cat. And that tax basically makes it so Social Security is less solvent. And this is coming from a Democratic president. I don't get that at all. But he did repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Major policy win. Goddamn phone. I'm going to ignore that. He also passed a nuclear arms reduction treaty, which really went a long way in securing loose nuclear weapons from getting into the hands of terrorists. Man, that phone's annoying. He also chaired a UN Security Council resolution to rid the world of nuclear weapons. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. If he follows through on his plan, we will be out of Afghanistan by 2011, midway through this year. He caved on offshore oil drilling, which I don't understand whatsoever. He appointed a bunch of really shitty economic advisors, Lawrence Summers, Timothy Geithner, Bill Daley as chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel as former chief of staff. These people are horrible people. They're completely owned by corporate America and Wall Street. Horrible people to choose. And but the last 2 things are probably his biggest accomplishments. Healthcare reform. 108 years of trying to pass healthcare reform, and Obama actually passed it. That being said, it wasn't as big a reform as I'd like. It was essentially the Richard Nixon plan, the Mitt Romney plan, the Republican Senate 1994 plan. It strengthened private insurers, but at the same time, it did have a lot of safeguards to basically stick it to the insurance companies. They can't deny you for pre-existing conditions. They can't have exorbitant overhead costs, and they have to compete with each other. So those things are very good. The bill, I'd say, is very good. It's way better than nothing. I would have liked a single payer or a public option system, but you do have to give Obama credit. He really passed something that will be benefiting America for years to come. It reduces the deficit. It's completely paid for. People are going to attack it because they're retarded, but it's a very, very good bill. Then, last but not least, there was the Wall Street Reform Act, which was so laden with loopholes that I can't even begin to name them all. But the good thing about the Reform Act was it did create a consumer protection agency to protect consumers against some of the not so good practices by financial services industry. It did some things for derivatives to prevent another crash. It attempted to end too big to fail. In my opinion, it probably won't, but it's a decent step. A lot of it was written by Wall Street lobbyists, though, so it's all right. One thing that did come out of it was Ron Paul was pushing this. It was an amendment to audit the Federal Reserve so we can see what the hell is going on the Federal Reserve, and it passed. We can now audit the Federal Reserve, so that's a pretty big win. The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, equal pay for equal work, regardless of gender. That's pretty good. He passed a gay hate crimes bill. Now, sexual orientation is covered in hate crimes. Appointed 2 female justices to the Supreme Court. The first Latina appointed to the Supreme Court. He's been appointing fairly liberal judges. That's the one thing Obama's been pretty liberal on, is his appellate court justices, and he's ran into a lot of opposition for him, but he has gotten some of them through. So I don't know. Lately I've been kind of split on Obama. I used to be firmly, I'm going to vote for a third party because Obama's been conservative and has buckled completely to every Republican demand, but he's been impressing me lately, especially going after this Medicare privatization scheme that Paul Ryan and House Republicans are cooking up. He's calling it what it is. He's calling it a very radical reshaping of our safety net, which it is. And he does vow to not renew the Bush tax cuts. Hopefully he actually follows through this time. I don't have a whole lot of trust in him after he renewed them in the lame duck session of Congress in 2010, but who knows? Hopefully he'll follow through. It's a winter politically, and it'll be an election year when they're renewed. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he did follow through on that promise. So Obama, I'm really split, but I might support him again in 2012.